Hutch. Hey man, good morning. How are you today?
Man, I'm still black, still paying taxes, man. How about yourself?
Good. Well, wasn't ready for that.
Of course not.
Dude, life is good. To those that don't know, Hutch is currently in Hawaii and it is what time is it over there right now?
I know it's 4:43 in the morning.
And for those that aren't seeing Hutch, he's got a big smile on his face. He looks like he's ready to just conquer the world. Hutch, thanks so much for being part of this conversation today. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How's business going?
Man, business. Now, business, you ask a question that we can do some amazing things with it, right? Because with that question, I can go directly into real estate, or I can talk about this single trajectory of life that we get to live, where everything synergizes towards what you believe is your purpose in life. And you can make that your life business. I'm an active duty in the Marine Corps, but before that, I lived in Jamaica for 18 years, where I grew up on what used to be a coffee slave plantation. Right now, I am an American by choice with Jamaican roots. Been a part of the Marine Corps for the past 25 years, and it has been the best mistake that I've ever made, brother. And so and since 2019, I started acquiring some multi-family properties. And the big goal towards that is to ensure that I can create something that will give my grandchildren, great grandchildren, a unfair advantage in the future so they don't ever have to walk to school bare feet like I did in Jamaica. To your question, brother, I could say business is good.
Wow, so much respect. Thank you. First off, thank you for your
Yes, sir.
service. We appreciate you.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
I'm 36 years old and I love my country. I love God and I want to fight for the freedoms that we have however I can, if it's in my neighborhood, but we need the service that you are providing. So thank you so much for your years of work for us. And also, what an answer, man. You are on mission. That was not a, oh yeah, work's good, man. I'm doing this and doing that. You have a purpose. I can see it in your eyes. And I love that you already touched on the legacy that you want to leave to your great grandchildren. So let's get into that. Invested fathers. That's the podcast here. And to my listeners, they're most likely dads. Obviously, there's some that are not dads, but we're doing the best to raise our families and do what's right and do what we're called to do. I'd like to start the conversation really by understanding a little more about what your family was like growing up. You got some strong values and beliefs. I can see it. Was that something that was instilled in you at an early age, or how did you become to be who you are?
Yeah, I think a lot of things. There are some great thinkers who have drawn a conclusion that give me a child from birth to age 7, and I'll show you the adult. That is true, I believe, until that adult decides to become something different. I think your upbringing plays a key role in who you become as an adult, right? But through repetition, if you want to change that paradigm that was created for you, through repetition, you can become really any spiritual being you desire to be. So, a lot of the things that I grew through in Jamaica, I think was vital, right? In my introduction, I said that I grew up on what used to be a coffee slave plantation. And what comes with that is you have this interesting family dynamic, right? Because we inherited the plantation after slavery was abolished and all the good stuff in Jamaica, right? We had all the mature fruit trees. We also had a river running through the plantation, a stream running to the plantation. We had a lot of domesticated animals. I say domesticated because they're not running wild. Everyone owns their own, at least one donkey. They got a few cows and a few goats, and they got some pigs and chickens and stuff. And then, of course, you got the slingshot where you can go out and shoot some birds if you want to eat. So it's a wealthy environment where you didn't have to struggle to find food, the basic necessities for life. We had that available. It was abundant. So I like to say that I grew up wealthy but broke. We didn't have a lot of money, but we never was hungry, if that makes sense. So in an environment where you think in most country where if you don't have money, you can't eat. For me growing up, we had food in abundance. So what comes with that is you won't struggle to find food, but you have to work for your meal. So everything that we ate, We either grew it, we grew it or we raise it. So we grew the plants, or we had to go pick a breadfruit, pick some avocado, run onto the mango tree. So we eat the one that fell if the birds or the goats doesn't get to it first. You know what I mean? It's like we're coexisting in this beautiful environment of just prosperity as it goes towards finding food. Not in the prosperity, not in the sense of having abundance of money, but prosperity in the sense of, okay, we're competing for these resources, right? If you go to the avocado tree early in the morning, chances are you might beat your neighbor. So that the early bird or whichever cousins wake up early catches or finds the most avocado that at a stage of ripening and fell off the tree. It's a beautiful environment of coexistence. You know what I mean? We're not fighting each other. We understand the dynamics, and then whatever your priorities for the day, right? Whether it's avocado, mango, you know what I mean? You get to choose that in the morning. And you learn that from the earliest of age. Because if you are not going to get these resources, chances are you're going to be left with the scraps, right? And I think there's something that we hear throughout life is that patience is a virtue. And what I've learned, especially in my early childhood, and it was solidified recently, not too long ago, I was listening to Grant Cardone, and I'm paraphrasing right now. Grant Cardone says so much useful information that is mind blowing and so transformational, right? He says that patience is a virtue, that you get to have the scraps when everyone else choose all the best resources. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So there are things that takes work, but it's also a point in your life where you have to go get what is yours. I've also learned that you have the right to get anything you want in life. There's only one caveat. You're not allowed to prevent others from getting theirs. I
See.
think that is powerful. A lot of those little things that I've learned in the early years of my life, when I go back to those time, brother, I try to find the usefulness in those things. And when I come back to the present, I am not dwelling on, oh man, oh poor me. I used to walk to school bare feet. I had to walk 3 miles at 4 a.m. to go catch the bus, to drive tens of miles to go to school and then walk up and down the hill in the dark. I don't go to the past to find a negative thing. I go to the past to find how did that improve my resilience today? How
Mhm.
was that shaping me to become who I am today?
Mhm.
So I think the past is important as long as we're choosing to find value in
Wow,
it.
that's great. I have so many thoughts. I have a 7-year-old at home,
Right?
and we are struggling right now with keeping him others focused. You mentioned like going to the tree in the morning to get this avocado, or getting up to go to the bus because you don't want to miss getting up early to walk and all that stuff.
Right.
We are not facing any of those problems right now. But there are some valuable lessons that were instilled in you at an early age that have created who you are today. And like you said, the 0 to 7, I love that analogy. I can see who you're going to be just based on how you were brought up. But then you get to choose, am I going to be this person that was brought up, or am I going to choose a different path? So, give me your thoughts on, you had a drastically different childhood than I would say a majority of the Americans, but how do we instill that same level of resilience, like you said, as dads?
So that is a weird thing, brother. That is a weird thing because when you grow through those times, you do develop a mindset that I don't want that for my children. And I think the injustice that I have done to my children is shield them from that environment.
I got to stop you because I understand what you're saying. We
Right?
don't want to, we had hardships. We don't want our kids to have hardships. But there's got to be some, because I talked to another guy and he said, I want to spoil my kids because I had a rough, we were
Yeah.
never allowed to do these things and they're little and I want to just pour into them. Is that wrong? What do you think?
I don't think it's wrong. Fortunately for my children, we were able to develop some good resilience in them through sports, through moving across the country, creating different challenges for them to learn to adapt to a new environment, new schools, new friends, new house, new neighborhood. So that in itself gave them the opportunity to be resilient because you take them to a new environment. Most of the time, we have moved halfway through the school year, which is not ideal. It's just the way things lined up with the orders for me to move from Hawaii to Florida to California, different things. That does create some level of resilience. And also, I've taken them back to Jamaica a
Mm.
couple of times to really see the way I grew up. However, when I tell them about some of the things that I thought was I was struggling through as a young person, they look at it like, Dad, that sounds like so much fun. And it's like, it got me thinking, like, yeah, that was fun.
I
I
love that.
had a community. Yeah, I had a community around me. So even though I get to go down to the river every morning, I had to go down to the river, catch 2 buckets of water. And of course, as I got older, then the bucket became lighter and I can now pull 2 buckets instead of making 2 trips, right? Instead of carrying 1 bucket on my head, I can carry 2 buckets on my hand. You know what I mean? I get to realize that if I move the donkey or the cows from this environment and make the rope this long, then they can eat that much food, and then I can just move them just a little bit more over the following day, then they can eat more food. And by the time I get back to a location, just like they do in the pastures, where they close off one area, allow the grass to grow, and then allow the cows to feed, and then move them to another location. Just like coexistence of animals, people, and plants. So when I take them back, they're like, man, that sounds like fun. It was fun. So there's plenty of ways we can shield our kids from going through unnecessary adversity, but still help them to develop resilience by the quality of conversation we have to them and the things that we expose them to let them know we talk about some things, and here is how you can learn from other people's mistake without growing through that struggle. So they know what struggle look like, but never really have to experience it, right? Sometimes it's important to experience a little bit, right? Expose them to necessary struggle to create that resilience. At the same time, exposing them to what is possible. It's important for our children to understand that struggling is not always a pathway to success, right? But understand the potential of what to happen if you're not thriving towards a greater version of yourself as a spiritual being, or the amazing spiritual being that God has created you to be. So exposure, some grit, some struggle, some resilience,
Mhm, mhm.
and then what is possible. Yeah.
100% agree. So this is great. Um, tell me about how many kids you have? What are their ages right now?
Yes, I got three. Got a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 15-year-old.
Okay, tell me how's it going right
Fortunately.
now?
All right. One of the things in my life that I think was important, I had a lot of freedom. I had a lot of autonomy. And the autonomy was created by my grandmother was raising me. She was deaf and blind. I was raised by my uncle as well. He would wake up super early in the morning, make us breakfast, and then he would walk 5 miles to go pick oranges on an orange farm, or cut sugarcane on the sugarcane farms, right? Sugarcane fields. By the time he come back, it was nighttime. So he made us breakfast, right? And we had to figure the rest out. So we wake up, get ourselves ready for school, right? And all that good stuff. So one of the things that was important was discipline. Discipline was important. And we got that from several different angles. We got it from our cousins. If our cousin was like 4 years older than us, if we get out of line, if we deviate off the straight and narrow path, a senior older cousin would freaking break down a freaking branch and yeah, knock you back in the right place. So discipline became, even though it was really forced discipline, it became a cornerstone, right? So as Athena and I, we start having children, we understand that it was important for us to create a household. And the reason why that was important is because in the early years of my life, I was deploying, man. I was deploying for 6 months at a time overseas. And then when I come home, I'll be home for 1 year. And within a year to 18 months, I was going off for a month to the Big Island, the Pukolua training area, someplace in the Big Island to go do some high elevation training. Then I would go to Arizona, then I would go to California to do different training. So I ended up only being home for 6 to 8 months at a time in different pockets. So it was really important for the family dynamic to be built, to be structured and built on discipline. So our kids learn really early what was acceptable behavior. So whenever they became teenagers, they already know what the expectation was. And between Athena, myself, and our three children, we develop a level of mutual respect in our household, right? To where we treat them with a high level of respect. And it was reciprocated because one of the things we have established in our household very early in our children's life is that you don't respect people because of who they are, right? You respect people because of your character, of who you are, right? So you disrespecting somebody, it's not based on their action. That is based on your reaction to whatever you perceive, whatever feeling you get from those individuals, right? So we help our children to develop real early in their life that you don't respect people because of who they are. You respect people of who you are. And it's important for you to continuously thrive to show up as the best version of yourself. So we never had any issues with our teenagers.
No, that's
You know,
great. Even before I asked that, I was thinking to myself, he probably raised them really like strong. There was a solid foundation at an early age that
right?
even when those harder years came of figuring out their identity or that rebellion that just, I don't want to do what mom said, that everyone's
Yeah.
about. Some parents are
Yeah.
like, yeah, we haven't faced that.
Yeah, it's really important for the parents to grow as well. That is the most important things, right? I think where some of us fail is that we still see offsprings, our children as child or as children. I've learned several years ago after I started doing a lot of reading to improve myself. The goal was to become a better father, better husband, better Marine, better brother, better all around person. I realized that one of the things that I've learned is that parenting at a young age is really important. But as the children get older, it's important for you to make an adjustment. And as they become teenagers, that's where us as parents start coaching our children into their passion, right? Early age, it's really important for us to expose them to as many things as possible so they don't worry about an identity crisis because there's a diverse option and they develop their passion real early based on this diverse environment that you have exposed them to. And as they become teenagers, then you start coaching them into what they're most passionate about within constraints, man, because we have this freedom where we can really choose whatever and whoever we want to be. There is a challenge with identifying what I gotta careful as I say some
No,
of these
no,
things.
I
There
think I
is
know where you're
a
going. I feel you.
yeah. So once we start having conflicting identity, then I really hope and trust that whoever we are or our children, they have developed the trust in someone that can provide them the guidance of what look likes. You know what I mean?
Said.
So even though we do get to choose whatever the hell we want to be, there are some things that are acceptable, whether it's our family dynamic or it's what societal norms have improved to be or have changed to be, or and also the cultural norm, which will give them the most acceptance in that version of themselves. I really hope that we become the parents that our children trust to provide them the guidance they need if and when they don't have some kind of identity crisis, right? Whether it's just in school, what college you want to go to, career field, what field you want to go to. Do you want to go to the military? Do you want to go the college route? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Or do you want to go do some mission work because you feel that's your life calling and you want to do something to get you to a place in your life that you envision that you're passionate about? I trust that they have developed a high level of trust with the community, especially at the household that we have created with them.
Excellent answer. And you
Yeah,
said a few things that have sparked some ideas in my mind. First off, you mentioned the
yeah,
training of reading books, trying to better yourself as a brother, as a husband. Love to know what were the
yeah.
resources that you used and what was the takeaways from some specific things that you could maybe share with us. And then the second thing I would say is this idea of what is right in regards to true north or
Yeah,
what's right for you. For me, I'm a Christian and I have the scripture as my guide
yeah,
for some really big questions. Obviously, there's things that are not mentioned in scripture that maybe are technology based. We can talk about your kids and what their, beliefs are. I think it's probably most helpful to hear where have you found that growing up over the last 50 years.
yeah. Growing up in Jamaica, it's I won't say it's a weird dynamic. It's traditional, like very traditional. Like you deviate from from what traditional household and different things look like, then you're gonna have some challenges, especially in the era in which I grew up in. How due to the diverse nature of what I do in the Marine Corps and the acceptable environment, all that good stuff, all that stuff come together. And as I mature as a leader, Of course, I developed the understanding of the importance of ensuring that everything synergizes. And when you start looking at your environment through the coexistence of these spiritual beings and with our free will and choices, then it really opens your eyes to, okay, is there really a wrong or right way of being? Right? So it's a principled way of living, right? Where some life choices doesn't really take away from being a principled person. So as a leader, especially in the Marine Corps, those are things that we learn over time to we get to have a shift in paradigm of how to create synergy. And when you think about it, if you focus on creating synergy within your workplace towards a common goal, right? In my case, our goal is to ensure that the Marine Corps is ready, right? Whenever a nation is least prepared. And the team that I have is the team that I am going to fight with. The same is true about our household, right? We create the synergy and ensure that we have good, strong family values. And every decision that we make should synergize with the family dynamic and the family values that we have created, with the understanding, especially as parents, that as your children mature, the things that we have taught them at an early age will change as they choose to make different life choices. You know what I mean? So I try not to put anyone in a box because there's so many things and opportunities and choices that we can make that will give our one single life fulfillment. So whenever we go back to God, whatever experiment that God wanted us to have on this physical realm, we did that and we did it with our own life path by what our parents or small community wanted. And we lived a principled life that can get us to the promised land as we envision it in the form that we envision it. I know that's a really weird answer, right? But
No, I
that is how
appreciate
my
it.
mind I've grown. I've grown over the years with creating synergy in every environment that I'm a part of.
I like the concept and the mindset of this life that we're in now, there's more. There are trials, there are confusions, there are hardships where
Right.
the world is broken, there's sin that's just tainted everything. But we have choices and we have tests and trials, and they matter.
Mhm.
And we're going to live forever somewhere. Bible talks about this.
Somewhere.
And heaven or hell, those are the choices. One of our podcast guests had mentioned these are opportunities for us to be able to see our Savior and say, I kept the faith and I look to you, and how much joy that will bring in light of we pass the test. And we don't always pass the test. We fail sometimes and we deviate and we
Yeah.
fall and we suffer and we need help and we need forgiveness. But I think your answer reminded me just that idea of there's something more after this. So this isn't the end. It's the beginning. And how we can as
I
parents.
think that the best thing this couple situation that could happen where we could get to the promised land after this physical realm. We get a debrief of our life, and God said, hey brother, here is your lifespan. You get to look at it through God's eyes. And he said, here's how you live your life. Here's what I created you to do. Go back and do it again. You know what I mean? Because no one really knows what happened after we go to wherever we go. And also, no one really know exactly where we came from. And if we came from someplace, what is existence like in that environment, in that spiritual realm or whatever? And when you go back to that place, what is it going to be like? Are you going to be cast in hell or whatever? Or do you get to, oh man, you messed it up, brother. Go do it again. Or you lost your chance to be a human being. You go back and be a dog. I'm not saying reincarnation is a thing. I'm saying we don't really know. But it's important that we have faith that, and I tell you the reason why I have this paradigm. My mom was a dressmaker, right? So she wake up like in the really early in the morning. So when I moved to Kingston, I lived with my mom and she would wake up super early in the morning. She would be at a sewing machine or a cutting table. She was cutting out a dress. You can give her any picture of what dress or suit you want to have, and she'd make it for you, right? I remember one day I came home from school and I was sitting there on our cutting table as she was sewing on the machine. And I'm not sure why I asked this question, but we used to go to church a lot. And I think I was probably about 13 or 14 years old, probably less than 16 years old. And I asked my mom, I get it, right? God made us, but who made God? And I don't know. I think she paused And then she gave me this answer that has been so freaking useful over the years, right? Because I don't think a lot of us in our, even though we're connected to infinite intelligence, I don't think we can truly explain everything, but we have this faith of what our beliefs is, right? And my mom explained it in a way that has been so useful. She said, that is a question that I never really asked. But here's what I have to tell you, Shalon. She said, if in the end there is a God and you have lived your life as a good person, then you get to inherit the eternal life. If you lived your life as a good person and in the end there is no God, you have lived your life as a good person. But in contrast, if you live your life as a bad person and in the end is a God, you would have robbed yourself of living an eternal life with God. And in the end, if there's no God and you live as a bad person, you would just be a horrible person and probably didn't have a good life. It's this faith that we are aspiring to be where our creator is. And I think that gives life a lot of meaning. At least for me, it does. Believing in something of a higher being, higher than myself, and just approach all relationship with that level of, okay, I am put here to be a good person to everything and everyone.
Yes. The testimony I hear, you're 13, 14. That's a crossroads type of age where you're deciding
100%. Yeah.
who you're going to be and what, this is what my dad said, mom and dad said, but do I believe that? So the fact that there was a relationship with your mom that you're thinking one day, and I love that you probably remember exactly the way the room looked and what she
Oh,
was
yeah.
wearing. It seemed like a very vivid memory and a core memory. And your mom gave her best answer that she knew. And I think as now that we're parents and we get asked these questions from our kids,
Yeah.
what am I, Dad, why did God create Satan? Or something worse. We have infinite intelligence, like you said, but there's still some really good questions out there that are like, this is the best answer I can come up with right now. I think as dads and moms out there, we do the best we can to give our kids solid truths.
100%. Yeah. If you think about it, let's paint a picture real quick. I had the luxury of my brother, sister, and I of creating a beautiful birthday party for my mother's 60th birthday. And as I started looking back into things, it was not until a few years ago I really, and when I had teenage children, and start thinking about how do I ensure that they get through high school and get to college and all this good stuff, the things that I think is important because we value education. I started really thinking about just like a lot of things. One of the thoughts that came up is my age, the age difference between me and my mother. In 2023, we got to put together our 60th birthday. And of course, it's important that we actually do a speech for mom. It was humbling to really think about that she was 16 years old when she got pregnant with me, right? And this is not 16 years old in America with all the resources available. This is 16 years old on the backwoods of Jamaica, countryside of Jamaica, where most people walk around bare feet or walking around in water boots or whatever, with very limited resources. And I really think about how nervous and scared she might have been at that young, tender age. However, just really thinking about the amazing job that she had with the knowledge that she had at that tender age and the result of what happened. She understood the assignment and she did such a freaking amazing job, right? None of our children a user's manual or operating manual, right? But we have a responsibility to ensure that they grow on a good trajectory, understand when it's important for us to take a step back and nurture them into their passion. You know what I mean? To your point about our parents really have done the best that they could with the resources and the knowledge that they had at the time. And we have the same responsibility as well.
And thank you, Mrs. Hutchinson, for
Oh
raising
no, my mom
uh
and dad never got married.
mom for
Yeah,
bringing Shalon into the world and instilling in him. Like you said, she knew the assignment. I love how you're talking it like Marine terms. Hey, there's the mission. She fulfilled the mission,
yep.
and here you are today. I'm really baffled by the journey you've been brought through. You're not like a lot of my guests here who just have a very somewhat easy background. I'm not saying everyone has the same opportunities and you make what you're given, but you have truly made your way through the help of your blind and deaf grandma and your cousins and the ones with the sticks. And I think you said
Yep.
a brother and mom. What a journey, man. I'm so humbled just to see what you've done. And now you have three kids. There was a question that I had asked about. You had said that you had really been diving into yourself, how you could be a better husband and a better dad
Correct.
and a better brother. What were some things that you did that maybe we could look at us and do for ourselves as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I covered it. I didn't talk about a lot of resources because what we become is an inside job, right? It's a choice. And we can read 52 books per year, but how much of those are we taking purposeful action from? So it has to be a conscious decision to improve ourselves. And when you're thinking about improve yourself, why are you doing it? Are you doing it because you want to get promoted? Or are you doing it because you want to improve your journey? You know what I mean? So I think it comes down to taking a conscious decision to become a better version of yourself, right? So whenever God exposed you to who you should have been, you are that person. And one of the things that I try not to like, this is exactly the thing that you need to do to get to that place. I try not to do that because there is there's not one answer.
Mm.
But for me, there's so many great people that have existed that I've done a plethora of research of what a principal center life look like, what some of the best decision, what does right look like, and they have done the necessary research, interview some of the good minds, some of the things that we have learned, some of the people that we have learned to respect over the years based on their contribution to society, and what they do, they put that into a book. And in that book, if we choose to read it and implement it, the useful things that we read into our life, then we get to go on this beautiful journey. And at some point, we're going to read something else that contradict that older way of thinking that might have changed with cultural or societal norms. And it's important for us to be like, okay, that no longer serve who I'm trying to be. Let me make that shift. Stay true to my core, and make the necessary change. So I do a lot of reading, man. If you go through my book list, my audiobooks, if I'm walking, running, going to the gym, I call my car my automobile university. Sometime if I'm deployed and I'm drifting off to sleep, I turn on my audiobook, put it on a slower speed. I set a timer so it goes off within 15 to 30 minutes. So I'm always purposeful about the things that is going into my consciousness and subconsciousness, right? I like rap music, like NF. NF talks about pain, right? You can hear the pain, but you will not hear any profanity. You will not hear any sexual explicit. You will not hear any racial slur, but it gives you that boost. And you get to a point, you be like, oh, like you get a good workout and you can listen to NF and you can be like, I understand. I have been to that place. Thank you for letting me know that I'm not alone. You get to understand that people are growing through some struggles as well. You know what I mean? And you don't feel sorry for yourself. But however, I'm always conscious about the things that comes into my consciousness and some consciousness. So one of the most transformational book for me, brother, it has been the book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Hmm.
Anyone who have read that book will understand that Stephen Covey did not create all these ideas by himself. Yes, you get to tap into infinite intelligence, right? And get to find usefulness in a lot of the things that he's read. But in that book, he gave us a lot of other resources. He got me to Think and Grow Rich, which is another transformational book. It got me to the what it's called Get Into Yes, or The Power of Positive No, or How to Win Friends and Influence People. So he took all these ideas and he put it into the seven habits of highly effective people, surrounded a principled centered life, right? Because I think within our core, that is what we need to strive towards. And then all these diversity that we have to deal with at times, when you become a principled person, none of those things affect you, whether you are conservative or liberal or your sexual orientation. Like none of these things affect your principled way of living, right? If that's your choice. So I find a lot of my growth through books by being purposeful about how I spend my time and the things that affects my consciousness. And so a lot of folks, their main source of strength and growth is their Bible. There's nothing wrong with that. However, in some cases, we need more modern information of things that we can relate to. That's my belief.
Yeah.
but also understanding that the life you're leading, you believe in something greater than self. And then after this physical realm, you go to a place and there is a pathway towards that place.
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate you saying is, and you went back with your kids, I don't want to put them in a box. There's ways to solve the problem that don't necessarily go this way. You can go this way, but
Right.
you're still solving the problem. And just that idea of, I feel like when I've recently read schools, just the way school is set up, there's typically one answer to this
Mhm.
assignment. There's a problem, but there's not just one answer. You can go at it different ways. And just that idea, you're always pouring these, like the principles are probably the things that do not change, right? Those are the things that are your
Correct.
core. I have a problem today. Let's go to the principles and then let's find a way to go at this thing. And I think as parents, we can totally implement that with our kids of, hey, it's not just do exactly as daddy says. When they're little, they need to do exactly as daddy says because they want to run to the street and don't run to the street. But as they get older, hey, clean your room or draw this picture, whatever it is that there's the to do,
Yeah.
and putting them in an environment to just solve that however they can. We're just about out of time. Appreciate everything that you have been pouring out. So many good nuggets of wisdom and value here. Let me end by saying, first off, huge thank you to those that final takeaway. What is something you can leave with our audience today? And then also, how can we keep track of what you're up to? I don't know if you have some resources that we can follow your journey from today.
Yeah. So I think the biggest things, if you look at a lot of the most prosperous families, and prosperous, I'm talking the longevity of the family staying together, but also the longevity of money creation that ensure that the family can continue to progress, because in this environment, money is important. It's important for us to get a deep understanding of the way money works and ensure that our children learns that. Additionally, ensure that as we create our financial structure, whether it be you create a business or you buy some houses, ensure that you have something that will ease the transfer of whatever you created, that wealth, to ensure that you can give your children an unfair advantage going into the future with the understanding of what you're trying to create. So ensure you got your trust, your asset doesn't have to go through probate. I'm not selling any of these things and just way that things. I say that to say this. It's important as parents, right, that we think in generation. So the things that I'm thinking about, my goal is to live to 103 years old. And I'm thinking about how will I continue to educate my children, my great grandchildren. And even after myself and Athena have passed on, how can they get a peek into who I was? And podcasts like these. So we host, my podcast is called the Multifamily Real Estate Experiment Podcast, where we give a ton of information of what it's like to be a passive real estate investor into an apartment complex and the long-term benefit of creating generational wealth. So it's important that as parents, it's important that we think in generations to give our children and great grandchildren a unfair advantage in life. So if your listeners want to get in touch with me, the best way to follow me is on LinkedIn. I do daily posts on there, mostly about real estate and mindset. Our focus right now is raising capital from private investor to purchase large apartment complexes in the Southeast and Texas.
Hutch, you're the man.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much for being with me today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for that last bit. We wish you the best, buddy. Thank you again for your
Yes,
time.
sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.